So this is Deborah Hamilton of Hamilton Law Mediation and also the MAAP plan. Hi, Joe. How are you? Good to see you. So we're going to start with just an overview of what the MAAP plan is because it's only 30 minutes. So I want to make sure at least you leave with knowing what the MAAP plan is. So it stands for Make a Plan. That's the M. Address the needs of your pets. That's one of the A's. Appoint caregivers. That's the other A. And the last piece is publish your plan. So before I check in with everyone, I just want to let you know that the most important pieces are the pieces that you write down. We've talked over I've done this every evening, every Wednesday evening, I've done this since the COVID crisis began because I was seeing people being taken out of their homes due to COVID and not necessarily having a plan for their pets. So their pets were taken to animal care and control. If you don't have something readily available, easy for somebody to see, with the name and telephone number of who to call, your animals will be taken to animal care and control. Now, a little background on me. I'm an attorney who helps people in conflict over animals. And the reason I made the MAP plan was because I broke my ankle in 2013. I had 9 dogs, and I didn't have a plan for the care of my pets. And as it turns out, the 2 people who I had made plans with sort of verbally over a glass of wine, one had broken her wrist 2 weeks before I broke my ankle, and the other was renovating her kennel. Now, you'd never think that somebody would be renovating their kennel, but they were. And so I had nowhere to send my 9 dogs. And my husband, bless his heart, said, I'm taking care of you. I'm not, hi, Sally, good to see you. I'm taking care of you. I'm not taking care of the dogs. And so I was sort of SOL, as they say. And I realized while I sat there for 8 weeks with a broken ankle that I probably was not unique in the fact that I had made plans with my friends or my family. And either they were going to be taking care of me, so they didn't want to really take care of the dogs, or they really had no idea how to take care of my pets. Or worse, I had not really thought of it at all and didn't have anybody in place. So I started this call in COVID because all of us are a little more vulnerable. It doesn't have to do with age anymore. It doesn't have to do with, the kinds of risky things you might be doing. It has to do with the fact that our pets are relying on us to navigate the journey they will take if something happens to us. So when I started the program, it was called I'm Not Dead Yet, because most people make plans in their will. And if you did that, that's great. However, you just have to remember to die in order for all those plans to come into fruition. Now, I don't mean to be flippant. Oh, yes, I do. I really am very flippant when it comes to that, because most people who hear me speak say, Deborah, I love everything you've said. And I'm so glad I have all these plans in my will. And I absolutely will turn to them and say, I'm so glad you sat through my hour program, 2-hour program, full weekend program, and took away that you have all your plans in your will and you're okay, because you're not. You have to have a plan that is available, whether you're dead or alive, whether I call it the 6 Ds. So it's divorce. If you get divorced, there should be a plan in place so you know where the pet's going to go. If you are delayed, so if you were at the Capitol and protesting, or even if you weren't protesting, if you were just at the Capitol and you couldn't get home because of everything, you might be delayed. You might have a disaster. COVID would be called a disaster. It's a pandemic. Disease, disability, and dementia. So these are things that we don't think about on a regular basis, that we really need to create a plan for our pets if something like this happens to us. So we come here every week. I give a few little tidbits out. Sally has been a regular, and I'm so grateful. Connie had something to do tonight, so she's not here and there. And Kieran also from Tenerife, because we have an international crowd here, usually is here, and he's not here from Tenerife. But what we do here is we talk about the things we can do to make sure our pets are safe. And I always leave a tidbit. So now, Joe, I'm going to check in with you. Where are you from, and what kind of pets do you have? You have to unmute yourself. Thanks. Great. Perfect.
Okay. I live in Jefferson, Maine, and I have a 4-year-old golden retriever.
Oh, God bless. I love Maine.
Yeah. Nice place to live.
It's a beautiful place to live. I actually summered there. I took 2 weeks in the summer and was in Saint something, right on the water. There was a house. We had a bed and breakfast. It was lovely. I wanted to move there. However, my husband doesn't like snow. And if you're from Maine, I'm from New York, you know that snow is what comes in the winter.
You have to
So
put up with the snow.
I
I,
know to
live,
get the
I live
beauty, you have to put up with the snow. Yeah.
I live on a lake, and surprisingly, the golden retriever that I have now just does not go in the water.
Doesn't
And
swim, huh?
the fellow I had before her, you couldn't get him out of the water.
So
So
there's the double-edged sword though there, right, Joe? Because then he would be wet all the time and plodding through the house. So this way you don't have her wet
absolutely
all the time, but then on the hot summer days, she's not cool.
right, absolutely.
I know, I understand. Well, I'm so grateful you're here. And I'm going to check in with Susan. Welcome, Susan. Where are you from and what kind of pets do you have?
Hi, Deborah. I'm from Virginia, and I have a well, actually, it's just about 14-month-old Coton de Tulier.
Oh, we love those. They're so
Yeah,
great.
she's quite a handful, and I've had two other Cotons that I lost. And Maggie, I was expecting a nice, even temperament, and that's not what I got.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
the interesting thing about getting puppies, and I know Sally knows this, the interesting thing about getting puppies is that the reason we get puppies is because we forget what it's like to have a puppy. And then we get a puppy and they bring all those memories right back to you. But of course, the dog before that was never as bad as this dog.
yeah. Yeah, well, she bites though. That's the only thing. So
So lemon water in a squirt bottle.
really,
Lemon water in a squirt bottle. So if you squeeze a lemon in water in one of those little atomizers you buy at CVS or Rite Aid, the little plastic ones with the atomizer, and
oh,
it has to be more lemon than water. It's not happy to her. And if you squirt it in her mouth, she's going to be like, "Ooh, that's terrible," and she's going to with her tongue and stuff. But you just say no, and that usually is deterrent enough for an Irish setter. With at least she's 14 months old, so she doesn't have the pin teeth anymore, and that's helpful.
yeah, yeah. I'll have to try that. The problem is she kind of surprises you. It comes up suddenly, and you're not prepared when it happens. So
Well, it's interesting. I also learned from a trainer that those little curlicue things that all the dogs love. Once they start biting you shove that in their mouth so that they know they can chew on that, but not on you. But as you said, it usually happens with very little notice. And so the squirt bottle has to be in your pocket, which is always difficult, or the little spiral chewy thing has to be in your pocket so that you can put it in your mouth and say, no, this is what you chew on. Those puppies, they can really keep us busy. And
yeah.
Sally, I'm checking in with you. How are you doing? How's Athena?
Well, Athena is wonderful. I don't have a puppy. I have an 11 plus dog, and I took her walking. We walked about 4 miles today, and she met a puppy, and they were so exuberant to come up and meet us. And she just stood behind me, and the owner said, "How old is your dog?" I said, "A little over 11." And the dog his puppy's up, down, up, down, up, down. I go, "I'm sorry." She really doesn't want to play. She'll be great with your dog, but she doesn't want to play. So, but Athena is fabulous. I think she's taking a nap right now.
Yeah, I'm sure she is after that long walk. So, Joe, you and Susan have young dogs, so it's good you're here. What brings you here? So, what did you want to know? I'm going to leave you with a few tidbits, but I want to hear if you have any specific concerns. So, Joe, you go first, and then Susan, I'll ask you. So, think of your specific concerns so that I can help you.
Okay.
Well, like I said, we have a 4-year-old golden. I got her 2 years ago from a breeder, so she was 2 at the time. And part of the contract was if we could no longer take care of her, or for whatever reason she goes back to the breeder. When COVID hit, I thought about what happens if we suddenly get incapacitated. So I actually got a name tag collar kind of thing to put on her collar that says it's got of course my name and address and phone number, but it says in case of emergency, return to the breeder's name, address, and phone number. The breeder's about 2.5 hours from where I am, so that's a little bit of a logistics problem. We don't have any kids. We don't have any family nearby. I just don't know who I would trust to to take care of my dog. I mean, I just love her to pieces. So
No, I'm here to help you figure
I have
that
a
out.
stopgap. Yeah, I have a stopgap measure with the tag on the collar, but
Right,
there must be
right.
more I can do.
Right. There is more that you can do. So hold that thought. Susan, what's your biggest fear?
Well, I have the same kind of agreement with our breeder, and I really haven't given this a whole lot of thought, but it has been a concern for me. I think one of the bigger things is, we have an emotional attachment to our dog, and she also is emotionally attached to us. If something happened, it would be very difficult. It's almost more than I can contemplate, because I think it would be really difficult for the dog to have to, readjust and that sort of thing. But I haven't made a specific plan. So I'm very interested to know what everybody's thoughts are.
So these are really important questions that every week I address, usually at least one piece of them, because it is really important to know. So I'm a breeder. I co-own every dog that walks out of my house. And Sally is really a ringer. No, she's not. She's a colleague of mine, and she has one of my dogs, and she knows the first line of defense is me. However, during COVID, as we all know, she lives in Connecticut and I live in New York. So she couldn't come to me during the shutdown. It would have been really difficult. She would have had to quarantine. So I found a solution that I pass on to all of the people who come to this meeting first off. And that is, if you're walking your dog in your neighborhood, which I'm sure maybe you are, because I think everyone's walking their dog now for lack of anything better to do, find out or just figure out who has a dog. And I did this in my neighborhood. I moved from my regular neighborhood and I'm renting in another neighborhood before I moved to North Carolina. And I knew everybody on my block and maybe 3 blocks over who had a dog. And so I put a 3x5 card in their mailbox at the height of COVID. I think I did this in April. And it said, "Hi, my name is Deborah Hamilton. Here's where I live. This is my telephone number. This is my email address. If anything happens to you, I am happy to come and take care of your dog in your home if you need me until somebody can come along." So both of you have breeders. I don't know, Susan, how far away your breeder is. Joe, you said your breeder was about 2 hours away. And if your breeder is out of state, that could be a little tricky now with COVID as well. So you really do need to find someone who will be that first line of defense. And the neighbor doesn't have to take your dog out of your house. So I'm a big, believer in you should have a fenced in yard. If you don't have a fenced in yard, maybe they can take the dog out on a flexi lead in your backyard, but let's not go walking, because who knows if the dog gets away. And Susan, you said your dog's really attached to you. They might not come back to somebody else. So you really want to leave them in their familiar area. When I put those 3x5 cards out, I got the response that I wanted, which was, "Oh my God, I never thought of that. Thank you so much. And if this happens to you, I'll come and hold your dog." And so I had 5 people who I got their number, their address, and I got their willingness to watch my dog if something happened to me until my main person who was going to come and get my dog could get there. So if it takes an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 days, who knows? Or because of COVID, who knows who could come here. The other piece of information that's really important, it's fabulous you have the name tag on the dog for your co-owners, but you also should have a note on your doors and in your car, because God forbid you have an accident, you're taken to the hospital. I don't know if you live alone or with someone else, but if you live alone, somebody has to know the dog is home alone, or if the dog is in the car with you, where to return that dog to. So always have, I love Post-it notes, they're my life, a Post-it note somewhere very prevalent in your car or in your home, on the refrigerator, on the doors. In the case of an emergency, please do not take my dog to animal care and control. That's the first line of the sentence. In case of emergency, please don't take my dog to animal care and control. Here are the numbers of 3 people who will come and take care of my dog. Please leave the dog in the house, lock the door and call these people. And you need at least 2, 3 is better, so that they can at least get somebody who will then say, oh yes, Susan, let me know. And I live next door and I'll be happy to watch the dog. And you can assure your neighbor that they'll only be watching the dog till the co-owner comes, or till your son or daughter come, or whomever comes. If you don't have any kids, then maybe somebody else, maybe a vet tech who at your vet's office. I find that those are sometimes the best people to be your second line of defense. So you have the neighbor who tells, the ambulance people that they don't need to call animal care and control because they'll watch the dog. And then they'll let the dog out in the backyard or on a flexi in the backyard, because you really don't want to take your dog out of that safe environment, especially if they're, as Susan pointed out, they're not really familiar with this person. It really does behoove you to take time. Like, I've introduced Roxy to all 5 of my neighbors who said they would come and take care of her. She happens to be a very outgoing dog, unlike Athena, who would stand there and go, I'm not playing with you. Roxy would have been in there jumping around, having a gay old time. She's 10, but she's a very young 10. So she's much more pliable. But if you know your dog doesn't take the strangers really well, introducing them to that first line of defense is really important. So tonight we're discussing this. The other piece of information is, if in fact you do have a co-owner, co-breeder, you need to make sure they know all the information about your dog. What are you feeding it? True, they'll probably be able to take care of the dog on their own, but wouldn't it be great if the dog came with directions? I always say I love to give a dog away with directions. So they're good with other dogs, they're not good with other dogs. They're afraid of thunder, they're not afraid of thunder. They eat really well, they're very picky. They do well on turkey, they don't do well on lamb. All this kind of information is part of the MAAP plan, that you get to answer all these questions. And when we all come together for a workshop or something, we all talk about this, because there are issues with co-owners. So if there's somebody who is perfect, I mean, I've had as many as 20 people on these calls and so many more listen to it later on. Co-owners are great, and I'm a co-owner, and I don't ever let my dogs go anywhere without my okay, because I'm one of those. However, I love when my people say to me, listen, my neighbor knows Fluffy really, really well, and I think Fluffy would be really great with my neighbor. And I go, you're absolutely right. Introduce me to your neighbor and we will connect. We'll understand that if something happens to you, that she's going to take Fluffy, but she's going to take Fluffy with the same safety net you had, that the dog will come back to me. And in the event when and if this has to happen, if the neighbor can't take Fluffy for some reason, the co-owner is still there as a backup. So I love the 2 questions you raised. Sally, I know you probably, you've already made your MAAP plan, so you've already done this, but I know that you're having a little bit of an issue because your co-owner, me, is moving to North Carolina. So that's an issue too. So if your co-owner moves, what do you do? So Sally and I are working through that, because she really wants to find someone who's in Connecticut who can take care of Athena if I can't get there. I would, of course, drive up from North Carolina to get her, but it's a 10-hour drive. So she has to find that short-term, short-distance person who can take care of the pet. So let me know if that helps you guys get some thoughts and juices running about what you might want to do. Susan?
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you're talking about, that the dog should be kept in their home environment. But if all else fails, what about an agreement with a boarding facility or, something like that?
That's absolutely a great solution, because if she's used to that boarding solution, that boarding facility, that's great. And that could be one of the numbers you leave. In the event something happens to me, I'm in a car accident or I don't come home or whatever, please call, Fluffy and Rover Dog Care. Call Steve at Fluffy and Rover Dog Care. And Steve knows that you have either left your credit card on file or you've, made an agreement to have him hold the dog until you return or until someone comes. And the the benefits of having a MAP plan is that you have redundancy. So you have more than one person coming for the dog, and that they all know about each other. So Steve will know that he might hold the dog until you get out, or he might hold the dog until the co-owner comes, depending on what kind of plan you make. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, I feel somewhat comfortable with that idea of, a facility like that being like maybe the last resort, rather than going to a dog shelter or animal shelter.
Well, you need to write that down. So the point of all of this, and I know I'm going to ask Sally in a minute, but the point of all this is if you don't leave the directions somewhere where someone can find them, which is the numbers that need to be called if something is amiss and the dog is in the house, they're going to take the dog to the shelter, so, or animal care and control, because they can't leave a dog alone in a house. And God forbid you're driving around and something happens and nobody even knows you have a dog in the house and you live alone, say. That's the time you need to also have a document in the car that's easily found that says, in the case of an emergency, I have a dog at home, and I need you to call one of these three numbers or all of these three numbers so that they can take care of my dog.
Yeah, how could you make sure that that document would be found if,
It can't be in your wallet. It needs to be on your dashboard. I am aesthetically unpleasing. I will just tell you that up front. I'm aesthetically unpleasing. Sally will know that, my house has big orange Post-it notes on the fridge, big orange Post-it notes on the dash of my car that says, in the case of an emergency, please call one of these three numbers, so that someone can take care of my dog. Or I travel with my dogs very often, so I want to make sure they call those three numbers. I'll tell you, I drove to North Carolina with my young Irish setter who's 4. Oh my God, he's getting old, because he's in hunt school. And I had stickers and I had people in every state I was going through, because I'm a member of I'm sure you can be a member of the Catan Club, and then you get the membership directory, and you could become a member of the Golden Retriever Club of America, Joe, and then you get the directory and you'd see, oh, look, there are 7 people in, and your breeder would know people too. There are 7 people in Virginia, and I'm driving from Maine to Virginia. So I have to find people in Connecticut. I have to find people in New Hampshire, just in case, God forbid. So you just find the people in the directory and you shoot them an email, because you get the directory. Every membership costs between like $20 and $40 a year. You get a nice magazine, usually from the breed, so you can keep up with the health issues of the breed. You can go on the AKC website and just join the National Club or learn something about the National Club. And then you have this directory of members who are going to help you in the case of an emergency. And if your breeder is a member of the club, then she can sponsor you. And if she isn't a member of the club, you should suggest she become a member of the club, because that will help her as well.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, something I hadn't really given a lot of thought, but
it's funny, Sally. Don't I come up with things every week that are altogether things people don't think about, because this is my passion. So I resolve conflicts between people over animals. So I do a lot of breeder owner disagreements. But my passion is helping people make a plan for their pets so their pets don't end up. And I'm sure all of you have read the articles during COVID where the dogs were taken out of apartments for people who had been taken to the hospital for COVID and didn't make a plan.
yeah, it's important for sure.
It really is. It really is important. And after this year, so we're coming up on a year of this community call. So I decided to throw together, 4 hours worth of MAP education in February 20th and February 27th from 12 to 2. I'm going to put together a program. Rose is my assistant. She's also on this call. She's going to send you guys the information about joining us. It'll be for 2 hours on one Saturday, 2 hours on the next. And by the end of it, you'll have this plan in place so you have peace of mind with respect to what the next steps are for your pet. And Joe, if you have your wife, and Susan, if you have your husband, they should be there too, because you all want to know what this plan is. The reason it's MAAP is because every step is absolutely building on the other one. So you have to make a plan. You have to decide what's going to happen with your dog. Susan, you said it perfectly. That sounds better. It sounds like, I don't want to have the dog go to the ASPCA. I'll find the Golden Retriever or the Catan group to take the dog. Absolutely. But then you make that plan, and then you know what steps you're going to take. And when we all work together as a group, it really is fabulous, because when you break off into groups, everybody goes, well, what about this? And you're going, shoot, I didn't even think of that. I know Sally has reminded me of so many things. And she's thought of so many things because she works closely with shelters, and she knows that they're not a bad place. So it's just, if you can avoid it, great. I don't know if both your dogs are altered or spayed. If they aren't, they may be when they come back from the shelter, because depending on what the law of the state says, you might not be able to get your dog back unless it's altered or spayed. So if you don't want your dog altered or spayed, then the dog will come back that way. So I work with a lot of breed clubs, and that would be, like treason to alter or spay a dog. But if they don't make a plan, that's what's going to happen. So we're coming up on the end of the half hour, and I really respect everybody's time. I would love to hear from each of you if you have anything else that I can help you with. Sally?
Well, no, Deborah, one point, my number one person on the list, of course, is you. Number two, well, is the person, I guess, number one, who lives closest to me. That person has cats. Athena hates cats. So she understands, she will definitely come and take Athena. And she said, and I can keep the cat in a separate bedroom for 2 days. But after 2 days, you have got to have another person come to take Athena. So even something as small as that is important to put in your plan.
Absolutely. And they have to know about each other. So when you have these backups, so this would be someone, and then she'd call me, it'd take me 10 hours to get up. So maybe a day. So the cat wouldn't be in for more than a day, and then I would get Athena. But you have to have that redundancy. My life is redundancy, right? That's sort of my mantra. You have to have redundancy, because you have to know that, like when I broke my ankle, the people who were said, I'll always take your pets, I'll always take your dogs, couldn't take my dogs. And so I had I had 2, but that's really the minimum. You really need 3, because it's notorious that 2 are going to be busy. And Joe, is there anything left right now that I can answer for you?
I don't think so. You gave me a lot of good ideas here in terms of information to get written down in the form of a plan. My thought is, instead of having stickies all over the place, if I write down a plan and include like the latest vet stuff with the shots and everything, put it in an envelope that says "in case of emergency," and put that envelope on the dash of the car.
Yep.
And in conspicuous place in the house to have somebody take a look at it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I like the idea of taking her to the boarding kennel where she is familiar with, and they know her. So things like that would be helpful. So.
And these all have to be in writing, because they're not going to happen if they're in your head.
Right.
And you have to tell the people who are the second line of defense that they are on the list. So publish means that you publish it with everyone. So you publish it with your veterinarian, you publish it with your caregivers, and you publish it with your attorney, because your attorney has to really pay these people for the time and effort. If you can't, that's what your attorney's supposed to do. So if you have a will or something like that, I always work with attorneys around the world. It's amazing. I've met so many great attorneys who go, I never knew how to do this. And I said, well, I'm glad you called. Here's how you do it. Because you really want to make sure that everyone who is going to be your backup knows about everybody else. Because quite frankly, veterinarians are not supposed to take care of someone's dog if that person isn't on the list. So you have to tell your vet, okay, so if something happens to me, Mary, Joe, and Susie Q are the 3 people, plus ABC Kennel is able to bring the dog to see me, to see the vet. you have to put that in as well. Your attorney has to know that you have Mary Sue and ABC Kennel as well, because that's what he's expecting the dogs to go to, and he'll reimburse them or she'll reimburse them. So these are all important pieces of the puzzle. There are so many more, right, Sally? I'm like a walking. I'm maniacal about this because I know how much our dogs mean to us, and now with COVID, I thought I had it all figured out before COVID, and then I realized, oh my God, I have to make sure that we have someone like next door, because if something happened, I would really need to have someone next door who would let my dogs out in the fenced in backyard, and make sure they're safe until I got back. It just is something we need to think of now, because, you know, they're giving us so much solace during COVID. They're creating that opportunity for us not to be as anxious as we are, and making a plan for their care long-term, short-term is really, really important. So I'm so glad Joe and Susan and Sally, you were here. If you want to join us on the 20th and 27th, please feel free. I'm sure Rose will send you information, or you can opt into the information that's in the chat. But I look forward to seeing you again. We're here every Wednesday at 6:30, because I love chatting with people and answering their questions, and giving them some new ideas about how to make sure they have a plan for their pet.
Yeah,
So-
you mentioned publishing the plan, and can that be like stored on a website on the internet, or
It can be stored on a website on the internet, but you have to physically, either by email, or by paper, hand it to the people who are your backup. Because otherwise, if I don't know about Joe and Joe's the next person in line and I can't take care of your dog, then your dog goes to the shelter. If I know that if I can't take care of it, I'm supposed to call Joe. And if Joe can't take care of it, I know about Sally and Sally can take care of it. That's key. It's this entire looping and redundancy that everyone knows about, because quite frankly, everybody needs to know about the plan for your pet, who's involved in the plan for your pet. For you thought, well, I'm just really like her to go to the kennel she's used to, who know her. Well, great. Well, they have to know that they're the people who are going to get that call, and they're okay to pick up the dog, because, you know, you either have a credit card on file or you've given them written permission that in the case of an emergency, they can come and get your Catan. I didn't ask you guys the names of your dogs, and that's a sin, right, Sally? I have to know the names of everybody's dogs. So Susan, what's the name of your Catan?
Maggie?
Maggie, I love it. And Joe, what's the name of the Goldie?
Effie.
Effie, oh, I love it. So, you know, you have to put into the paperwork. If something happens to me, Maggie goes to ABC Kennel. And if something happens to Effie, Effie goes to XYZ Kennel. If that's the first line of defense that you've set up. And they have to know that, okay, I agree. I actually work with a number of kennels to make sure that A, in the case of an emergency, they know they're the first line of defense, and B, if it's like a hurricane or something like that, they have to have backup as well, because they might have an emergency as well. But that's the kind of stuff I get into during the discussions over the weekend, because there are so many things you have to think about when you live like we do. Susan, you told me you lived in, I'm sorry, I forgot already.
Virginia? Northern
Virginia. Yeah, so I don't know if you live near the coast, that would be hurricanes. Joe, if you live near the coast, have hurricanes or snow. So you have to always be aware of what could happen and might not let you get home, or might stick you at home, or might create an environment. Thank God we don't live in California. Connie's not here. Connie usually tells us about the fires in California, or now COVID in California. So she left fires where she had to have the dogs ready to leave in a moment's notice because of the fire. She traded that in for the high levels of COVID, which means that they stay at home. And she lives alone, so she has 3 people in line written down, and they all are within probably 2 or 3 miles of each other, who know about each other's dogs. It really behooves us. I speak at like the Bristol and the Atria, the independent living facilities all the time, because I want to allow them to know that they have to make a plan for the pets as well in case one of their residents gets sick. Who's going to take care of the dog? Well, you have to make sure that's in place. So if that's all the questions you have right now, I'm going to let everybody go to celebrate this incredibly wonderful day where we move forward and I pop the champagne. And let's hope that everything goes smoothly going forward. We can all pray and hope. And I wish you all a fabulous evening. Don't hesitate to write or call or sign up for the program. It's Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, and the MAP plan. Kiss your dogs for me. Kiss Effie and kiss Maggie and kiss Athena for me. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
You're
Deborah.
very welcome. Good night.
Good night.